So welcome everybody to the second hour of Mindshifters Radio. And today is the last day of May. It's May the 31st, 2022. And our call-in number is 563-999-3581. And if you press 1, that will put you into queue to talk to us. And we would love to hear your comments and your questions because that makes this your show. Welcome, Michael.
Thank you, dear heart, and welcome, everybody. Delighted and honored that you're here, that we get to move this conversation to the next level as we tap into these amazing first century tools and the refinement that comes from having the brain cells based in the first century Aramaic words of Yeshua rather than the brain cells based in English, stimulated by English translations that come out of Greek translations of Aramaic manuscripts. Makes a whole different game out of it. I was talking to someone this morning who was referring to their understanding of words as they appeared in the ancient scriptures, and were wondering why those particular words were selected, those particular words were chosen. And there's a passage, actually, I wrote about in a new book I'm working on called The End of Suffering. And the new book is similar to Why Is This Happening to Me Again, only it's Yeshua talking to a character rather than me talking to a character, as in the Why book. And the quote is brought forward from the scriptures where the Creator supposedly is saying, here a little, there a little, with stammering lips and another tongue will I speak to. And the character says to Yeshua, why would the Creator speak with stammering lips and another tongue? And Yeshua kind of laughs and says, well, you know, it isn't that the Creator's doing that. We play the game that everything's somebody else's fault. Our minds are basically set to see someone else as the problem. And he says, in fact, we're listening with stammering ears. In other words, brain cells that don't match what was originally spoken of. And so what we're looking to do with this conversation is get back to as closely as possible to the first century meanings of the words of Yeshua, to be able to have the eyes to see and the ears to hear. When he spoke of that passage, you know, he who having eyes does not see, and he who having ears does not hear. I think we're fairly safe in assuming that most everybody in the audience had what we call physical eyes and ears. That wasn't the conversation. It was having brain cells, and whatever brain cells you have for something is the way you're going to tend to see it. And what we're looking to is to establish, and you know, when the original manuscript work was done with the Kaworth manuscript, they had 25 of the world's top Aramicists, and a group of 25 really worked diligently to establish the first century meanings of those words, so we could actually hear in the context of the words at the time the meaning of those words in the first century, what was being spoken about. Becomes a much different conversation than translation upon translation upon translation, then going to a whole different, you know, conceptual framework. I mean, it's just so much, it's, quote, as has been said, lost in translation. So we're looking to establish the first century meanings of every concept, of every word, of every idea. There's so many of them that have been turned backward. They've been turned inside out. They've, you know, most people live in a world where I love you means that I have something inside of me that I'm doing to you, as opposed to recognizing that love speaks about a state of being, a state of who I am, not something I do. And if I give my mind the goal of, quote unquote, loving you, doing that, then I'm going in a whole different direction. My focus is on you rather than my focus being on how I be, what the state that I'm living in. And so that's just an example of the shifting of those words. And we're here to get as clear as we can about recognizing as well the power of words. We ascribe to words the power that they don't have. That is, someone ostensibly speaks about an experience, and people go, oh, let me have the experience from their words. And words can't give us that experience. And the part of the first century Aramaic scriptures that's been pretty much ignored is the piece in the puzzle that words can fulfill, and that is words can give us instructions on how to produce a result. But words can't describe. I mean, you listen to that word, well, let's talk about this. And about meaning out around the edges, about it. You can't transfer the experience directly in words. But if you understand that it's about the tools, and what I've done over the last 40 years, specifically with the Aramaic, is work to listen to how in those stories the tools were applied in order to bring about a result, not hope that the words would give me the result, but rather taking the tools that are described, understanding how to apply them, then we produce a whole different result than what happens when we try to get the experience from the words. So in essence, that's what we're here to share with you. That's what we're here to move into conversation with. And of course, interaction, questions become an important part of the process. Sometimes we'll have people who say, well, I'm consuming too much time. I need to leave so that somebody else can have some time here. And no, that's not the idea. We want to deepen our conversation with you as deeply as it can go. And so if you have 2 questions or 10 questions or 100 questions, we're here to answer those 100 questions. And when we're having a conversation with you and you want to deepen your experience of these tools, the way to deepen it is to create an inquiry, to ask the questions and to pursue the answers until you can apply the tools effectively within your life. And that's what we're here to do. And so if you're out there in listener land, we'd love to hear your voice. We'd love to hear what's happening in your world, how you are doing it, applying the tools. Are you doing the worksheet process? It's interesting that I can say that to people over, here's the tool. Here's what you apply. And I would say at least 8, maybe 9 out of 10 times when somebody calls in and says, well, how do I work with this? And I ask, have you done a worksheet? The answer is, I hadn't actually thought of that. The forgiveness worksheet process, the reality management tool, is the core tool of this work. Everything is built on it. And so you can't have the experience of the tool until you actually use the tool. And in essence, the power of that tool is, there's a line in the Course of Miracles that says you must return your mind to the moment at which the original offense or event or trauma, whatever, happened. And most people want to go searching for it. And forgiveness, the genius of this tool that was devised 2,000 years ago, of forgiveness, is how you return your mind to the point at which that energy dynamic of trauma or loss of awareness of the truth of self happened. And when love is present, when you're holding the space for it and love is present, and you allow yourself to drop into those spaces within you, that's when the trauma begins to be undone. And it's the undoing process that is forgiveness. Great line in the Course says, you need not seek for love. You need only seek, find, and release the barriers you built within yourself against it. How do I do that? Well, here's how you do it. In a case where your mind is serving up a construct that is not based in love, in a situation where you're feeling some sort of irritation, agitation, hostility, rage, fear, guilt, grief, pain, or trauma, notice that in that situation you have an object of attention. Something or somebody you're looking at. It may be yourself, it may be a situation in your life, it may be someone else. And notice that there's something you want from that object of attention. That something is called the goal. And the goal is the key way into collapsing perception, because perception doesn't happen without an active goal. And if a perceptual construct of the mind is based in some form of hostility or fear, then by canceling, in the Aramaic language, the word forgive is shabag, it means to cancel. By canceling that goal, the driver for the perceptual construct of the moment removed, and the perceptual construct collapses. When it collapses in on itself, and there you have, at least energetically and oftentimes cognitively, the circumstance in which the original energy offense happened. And if love is present when you go there, you'll notice in step 4, there's the instruction to connect to active present love. And, ultimately you want to make this an overriding state that you live in. And if love is present and you cancel the goal that's driving the process based in hostility or fear, then the process or the perceptual result, the end result of that process, will collapse when you cancel the goal that's driving it. And when it collapses, bingo, it drops right into that hidden part of the mind, and you have access to that hidden part of the mind. And there's where the power of forgiveness lies. And so we're delighted that you're here to have this conversation with us today. Ms. Jeannie, do we have anybody in the phone queue with a hand up or anything happening in the chat room?
The hands that are up are the ones that talk to Dr. Tim. So, no, we do not have a hand up, and it's quiet in the chat room. So someone press 1. We have 45 minutes.
Lots of time for conversation. What's happening in your world? How are you applying the tools? What's your experience of applying the tools?
And we
do you
have a hand up.
Any? Oh, awesome. Let's say hello.
610. It's Miss Susan. Welcome.
Hi. Oh, hey.
Hey, welcome, young lady.
Thanks. I still have Mr. Boone, Jacob, here with me, but my question is a different one. Yeah, he goes away tomorrow to his program in New York. I am reading a book called Darkness is My Only Companion, and the title is a quote of a psalm. I forget which number. It's written by a friend of mine who I knew years ago in New Haven. She's an Episcopal priest who had a ostensibly very happy and good childhood, although several suicides among her cousins and friends and acquaintances happened when she was young, which is traumatic. She became very, very, very depressed, mentally ill, hospitalized several times, had electroshock therapy, has been on many medications.
Ouch.
She's brilliant, and so she could observe herself in the states that she was in, as if her mind, she could step away from herself. And she used scripture as her tool, and she used it well, even in translation. And what you say about the Aramaic, I mean, I hate to think of what better tools might have been available to her if she had known even what forgiveness means. But in any case, she would force herself to sit with scripture, read the Psalms, care for herself as best she could. She's a married woman, had 2 children. Her husband was very good with her. One time we had a prayer study group together, and one time we were all going to her house. When we got to her house, her husband met us at the door, and he said, "Come in and go on in and carry on, but Catherine is not going to be with us." Catherine Green McCrite. It's no secret. So I am puzzled because I think when you're talking to us on the radio show, you're talking to people who are highly functional, more or less normal. We have trauma, neuroses, maybe things that are with different, even scarier labels. But on the other hand, she's outside the ballpark, and she and I are about to have a long discussion about this very thing. And I'm even thinking I would love to hook her up with you and Dr. Kim if she would be interested to see whether even at that level, she calls herself simply ill, and she'll come out of it. She'll have remissions, but she says she can feel the approach of this terrible depression where she is so... Right. It's like you talked about having asthma so badly that you couldn't even get up to go to the bathroom. She said she was the same. She would be in bed, unable to move. And she's a person with great willingness and willpower. Can you say anything about that state and that extreme of illness, and whether that, too, comes down as trauma in our DNA? And just hitch it up with all the other stuff you've been teaching. If you would, I'd love it.
Well, I guess we could say lots of things theoretically about what's going on in that situation. When I hear the words happy childhood and several suicides, I say that's pretty much an oxymoron. Suicide itself is certainly a major trauma for someone. But what leads up to, what surrounds suicide is trauma beyond trauma beyond trauma. And one individual who commits suicide is a reflection of a whole system of people who are carrying burdens that humans aren't designed to carry. So that would be my take. And so what I would want to, and it sounds like, she found ways to adapt and move forward in some way in her world, overcoming this debilitating depression. What I would love to see is her in an intensive circumstance applying forgiveness and see what happens with that burden that she's carrying that obviously is triggered by, and I can only imagine, when you say several suicides, I fortunately, lived in a world as a child and a young man where suicide never came anywhere near me, but I do know of people, over the years that I've worked with who've had suicides within their family systems and the tremendous energetic burden that is. And so I would love to see this woman access the forgiveness tool and have the support to really start to process through what she's carrying and see where she goes with it. Because while there are all kinds of adaptive thoughts we can think in order to ameliorate traumatic thought disorders that lead to such, extreme behavior as suicide, I don't know of anything else anywhere on the planet or in the scriptures that is going to do the cleanup job that forgiveness is going to do.
Mhm.
I mean, there's just, I mean,
go ahead.
So I'm just saying that to me, it's like, you know, there's any job that I want to do. I want to go out and cut the grass, and what I have is a little tiny, you know, I've got a 10-acre lawn that I need to cut, and I've got a tiny pair of children's scissors. So I'm going to go out and I'm going to cut the grass, and I can cut the grass with that little tiny pair of children's scissors. But, you know, by the time I get done with 10 acres, I'm going to be cutting grass that's 3 feet tall. It's like, you know. Without the tool, what do I do? I mean, if I've got a power mower, or if I've got a riding tractor, I can cut that grass in a matter of minutes. Where you know, if I'm going to do 10 acres with a pair of child scissors, I might be 5 years to get through it once. And to me, that would be, you know, when I wrote that section in the front of Why Is This Happening to Me Again, of life without tools, without that tool of forgiveness, I can't fathom where my life would be. And with the inability to throw off the generational load of trauma, let alone coming up in an environment where several people have committed suicide, and the accompanying trauma energies that lead up to, result from, and, you know, as one walks away, what kind of load they carry from someone in their world committing suicide. To me, that would be the extreme of life without tools. Even if one had the scriptures for comfort, you know, could listen to the wisdom writings and gather some comfort, if I'm not cleaning out the root energetic trauma of that, I don't know how to live even.
Mhm. This is
so
great.
I hope that she's got the ears to hear what you're offering with forgiveness, and that she'll take the tool and use it. And, you know, it'd be wonderful to have her share on the show. It'd be wonderful to support her through that process of learning forgiveness and seeing what results she produces.
It would be. It's going to be a challenge for me because I don't know her that well, but when I read her book years ago, and she's had a follow-up version of it, another edition, and she has shifted some of her understanding of what she went through. And it's been translated around. It's sort of like your book. It's made its way around, and the Archbishop of Canterbury wrote a preface to it. I mean, she's gotten a lot of good attention for it. And I think I have to do a worksheet. I'm a little intimidated by her intellectual abilities, but I'm going to have to get the courage to make this pitch, because I really think if she would join us and grab hold, it would be a whole other level of understanding of what she's been going through. Whereas I was thinking, she's outside the pale. She's really just plain sick. There's no way of getting to her. And you're telling me that this isn't true. So this is great.
Absolutely
and it also
not.
shows where, so I've been thinking, I guess I've always thought there's a ceiling on it. It takes a certain healthy enough person to do the work. And you're not really saying that. You're saying everybody is healthy enough. Everybody could do it.
Well, I would say that everyone who has the cognitive ability to have a minimal level of understanding, I'm not saying someone who is, let's say, organically brain damaged, that is going to be able to comprehend perception being a construct driven by a goal. I'm not saying everybody is going to be able to function at that level. And for that person, there's breathing as well. But for someone who can intellectually understand what's going on from the perspective of Yeshua's take on forgiveness, anyone who has that and has the willingness to do it. Of course, if somebody says, "Oh, that's interesting, but I'm not doing that," then they're not doing it. But anyone who's going to engage in the process is going to produce a result.
Yeah.
They're going to be different skill levels. I'm going to go on a journey from, up in New York to Florida, and I can drive, so anybody who can drive can do that journey. Now, somebody who's an expert driver, there are going to be levels of the ability to make that journey, and somebody's going to make it in, a day and a half, and somebody else, it might take them 3 weeks with a whole lot of detours and stops and getting lost and, not understanding GPS or what have you. But anybody who's got a reasonable skill and ability to drive is going to be able to do it. Anyone who has a reasonable intellectual acuity is going to be able to take this tool of forgiveness, and if they're willing to do so, head in the direction of cleaning out the traumas that they've carried.
Yeah, I agree, and I just realized that I have thoughts about some scholars, theologians who look to the Greek and they don't look to the Aramaic, they don't trust it. That may be an issue with her too. I mean, it's going to take a good sell. I'm going to do it.
Well, here's my take there.
Yeah.
Here's my take. Don't believe a word I have to say. You don't have to believe in the Aramaic. Here's a tool. Pick it up and use it and see what happens. I mean, don't stand there and scorn it and say how stupid this is, but have some reasonable respect for, someone that says this might be useful to me, says this will function for me, so I don't believe it for a minute, but hey, what have I got to lose? I'll give it a try. And if someone will take a reasonably integrated and honest intellectual shot at using the tool, what they believe is irrelevant, it'll change the structure of their minds, because that's how the mind works. Now, there is a whole theology too, which I can see becoming a challenge, and that is this theology of suffering is what's going to give it to you. Getting on the cross and, getting down and suffering with Yeshua is where you're going to get your quote-unquote salvation. And for me, I can see where understanding how the mind works, if one does that, one can make motion forward, but it's not going to resemble what forgiveness is going to do. And I think it's a totally and completely errant theology based on an errant understanding, whether it comes out of translation errors or just perceptual errors. The man didn't say, I come to bring you suffering. He didn't come to say, he did say, take up your cross. He didn't say, take up mine. And to me, when he says take up your cross, that means he's saying there's something in you that inhibits you functioning as love, and you're going to need to face that, and you're going to need to process through that. And it may be from the lives of the fathers that may go back 10 generations within your bloodline, so it's going to be a significant amount of effort and work on your part to work through it, but you can do that. He never said, I came to nail you to a cross like me. And he never said to get up on that cross. He was, to me, he was pretty singular in his purpose. I come to bring you life more abundantly. And, you listen to his repeated admonitions about love, even if you don't comprehend that love is a noun as he used it, but rather treat it as a verb, as our Greek-oriented culture does. If I can comprehend that that's who I am and I'm working to restore myself to that, then with forgiveness, I will move to that goal. If I have, a reason, a reasonable willingness to do so, and I would love to talk to her. If you chat with her and she's not interested in talking on the show, I'd love to talk to her anyway. We could set up a 3-way call, and I'd love to have a conversation. I'd love to have some comprehension. She's obviously found a way through a great deal of pain to adapt. And to come forward with something that to some part of the community makes intellectual sense. I would love to interact and have a conversation and, just to see where it goes.
That's great. Thanks for the offer. That's wonderful. Yeah.
How is
good.
it you come to be opening communication with her?
What was it? Oh, she contacted me about my daughter. She didn't know my daughter was my daughter. She said, "This is a woman whose middle name is Bingham. Is she one of your family members?" And I said, "She's my daughter." And suddenly we began writing. I knew her in New Haven only as an acquaintance. We were in a prayer group together. We weren't personal friends. And she also was a curate at one of the parishes Tim and I went to for a while. And she always was highly functional, but reading her book, I see how hard that might have been for her at times. She would override as best she could, and sometimes got to the point where she would have to call in sick. She just could not function, and then she'd go to bed for however long. But yeah, so we started talking, and I said, I've given your book away, but I'm in a kind of training program, ongoing mentor-related interactive radio show, and I said it has to do with mental health and spiritual issues, connecting to healing through spiritual understanding of mental health issues and so forth, and I didn't go into it at all. I said, I'm going to get your book again, and I did, and it was, how you read something for a second time, it's like a new book. It was all new, and it's an amazing book because she not only approaches her illness, describes it objectively, but she also has one or two chapters about what it was like during an episode where she was journaling, and you could see her thought processes and the pain she was in, and it's all there. And she said, this book ultimately isn't about me. It's about reaching people with mental illness and forming a community of understanding and finding ways to be well. And I'm telling my story as a vehicle to say, you're not alone. Here I am, and this is what I've been doing. And she has gotten a lot of people coming out of the woodwork saying, oh, my God, I go through that too. So there's a whole level of, she's reaching people that needed reaching who couldn't even come to the radio show probably, and it might be a way to get them there. So, yeah. She's up in New Haven, so we're not nearby, but we have a date to talk on Thursday or Friday. And
cool.
Talk to her.
Sweet. Well, when you look at the one of the basic concepts of this work is that when we're engaging in a thought disorder, the basic thesis that this is a physiological device, this so-called body-mind unit, this energy system, is a device that's designed to incarnate love. That's the bottom line thesis. And when we bring an energy in that doesn't belong, then we've brought in the energy that's off the mark, which in Aramaic would be defined as sin. And that energy that's off the mark, because it's of a disintegrative nature, will tend to destroy this structure over time, its physiological, mental, emotional function. And so to start to look at what is the thought disorder that is bringing the energy system into its current state of pain and trauma, and am I willing to raise that thought disorder to question and literally throw it out? Am I willing to bring it forward? There's an energetic transmutation that occurs when energy fields that have resonance meet. And when I can open the thought disorder in the presence of active love, there is a literal energetic process that takes place. And that process we define as forgiveness, that the lower trauma-based or quote-unquote sin energy is dissolved by having its root exposed to active love. It's like, opening the soil to the taproot of the weed and burning it with the sun, and that weed is gone. It's done. And, to have, again, I couldn't fathom, and you didn't say exactly how many suicides, but one would be one too many, and two would be, enormous for a young person to go through. What kind of thought disorders are going on in a world where suicide is possible, and what kind of mental environment is there, and what needs to be cleaned up has got to be enormous. And Yeshua said, "Here's how you do it," and I took him at his word, and I watch people moving in the direction of mental health, people who've been told that their lives are hopeless, and watch them turn it around and live differently. So I look forward to the opportunity to hear the result of her tapping into the work and what happens.
Oh, me too. Yeah.
And when you talk about, high-level church officials, and I have no idea what the Archbishop of Canterbury wrote about this, but so often we see theologies who move into this realm of almost admiration for thought disorders, for suffering, as though it's kind of, I remember when I was a kid, I read a book called The Red Badge of Courage. And it's like, mine was the worst suffering that anyone had ever seen. And there's some kind of an ego shine, I think, that happens there. And I don't think there's any theology that would come out with that conclusion that's based on anything that's real that Yeshua taught. Though I've seen many come out, with that kind of conclusion and encourage suffering. You look back to the times when people used to use, cat and nine tails on themselves in order to be holy. And I think that's the most, not even sure what to say, about the most errant interpretation of a man who said, "I come to bring you life and bring you life more abundantly."
I know, I agree. Okay. Well, I'll go back and look at the preface. I thought it was beautiful what the Archbishop said, but now that you're asking the question, I can't tell you what he said. I'll go back and look at it. Yeah.
Well, and I have no idea. He may be on track with how she's cleaning up her mind and acknowledging how she found the scriptural pathway to start to clean up her own thought disorders. I don't know. I just know that I have had people that I've worked with that are just like, well, if your work doesn't involve suffering, then it's not about Yeshua. It's like, it sure is about the Yeshua I know. It may not be about the one you know, but...
Right. Well, thanks. I look forward to connecting you guys if I possibly can.
Yeah, and thank you for opening that conversation, opening that door. It's certainly a whole different arena to look in. The title of her book again is?
Darkness is My Only Companion.
Darkness is My Only Companion.
Yeah, and people have challenged her on that title. I like the title because that's what it's like when you're down there. You think God's gone, never did exist, and she goes there and keeps praying in there. She says, I'm going for the God above the God above the God that I think has disappeared. I'm looking for the God that's beyond that, that's still here. She doesn't say it that way. That was sort of my take, what I would do when I was really feeling very, very depressed. She didn't have the tools, so she's on medications and I think she figures she'll be on them for life, and maybe she has to be. I wonder about my grandson. He is on so much stuff, and by the way, thanks for your reinforcement. I did talk to my daughter this morning, and she still disagrees. She said, Mom, you just have to you've got to do Al-Anon, and you have to take the position that drinking and weeding and so forth is not acceptable. And I said, I do take that position, but I don't want to slam doors. I want him to talk to me. But I think I may have erred because I think he's using more weed because he has a bong. He's thinking he's not hurting his throat. So I'm I'm sort of backtracking and thinking, oh, brother, you know. So, and we had a party last night, a little family thing, and there was liquor, and he had more than his doctor says should be allowable. His psychiatrist says no more than 2 glasses of wine a night max. He's also trying to keep the door open, knowing that Jacob's going to drink. So I don't know where this is all going.
I'm sending you a link to a poster, and I've used this in rehab centers where I've gone with which brain do you want? Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen that.
And
that is crazy scary.
Well, as someone who has the intellectual acuity to go, I want to be healthy, and they told me pot was good for me, to look at that, and you know, I mean, a picture doesn't lie.
Maybe the timing is right now. I've never sent that to him, but he's here for the rest of today. He leaves tomorrow, and you know, maybe I can show it to him. I'll bring it up on my computer and have it sitting there or something.
Yeah, and I think for $6 you can order a copy of it. And it's bright, it's colorful, and I mean, it's a clear brain scan of what a healthy brain looks like and what different drugs do to its function, energetic function. And
just thanks. You got it.
Yeah.
Whoa, yeah.
I think
that is powerful.
I think the link for that is on the bottom of the. I can't quite read; it's too small on my phone. But if you just Google which brain do you want, you can order it from Ammon Clinic for $5 or $6.
Yeah. Thanks. Got it.
It makes for a pretty simple choice. And it sounds like he has the intellectual ability to recognize he wants to have a brain and he wants to function.
Yeah. Well, he said an interesting thing. He said, I don't think I can take the bong up to my program in New York. I won't have access to pot up there. And I said, how do you feel about that? And he said, I think I'll be okay. So he hasn't got a lot of anxiety that I notice about being deprived of it. But then again, you know, he just got in the car just a few minutes ago and drove off somewhere. I imagine he got himself probably something to drink or something. So, and we are enabling him because he has no job, and so we're giving him what we call wages for singing in our choir, and now it's just going to be an allowance over the summer when he's in this program, and we're sending him money. We're doing what Al-Anon says don't do. Al-Anon says don't give them anything and let them end up on the street. I'm not doing that. So, I don't know.
Now, did I understand you to say that he's getting in the car and driving under the influence?
No, he gets stuff and brings it home.
Oh, okay.
You know, he's
because that would certainly be a place to draw a line.
Oh, yeah, definitely. And he's leaving his car here. He's taking the bus to New York. Who needs a car in New York? He wouldn't know what to do with it.
Who needs to pay for the parking in New York?
Right. We said no way.
I remember we used to go up and we did conferences, you know, spoke at Madison Square Garden and the Kravitz Center, and it was $80 a day to park with a motorhome. It's a different world.
Yeah.
And interesting enough for me, I love New York. Yeah. It's crazy.
It would be very exciting, I think, and it probably will be very stimulating for him. So, did you get that video I sent of him practicing? I don't know if you got it. I sent you an email of a short video. I left the show yesterday because he wanted me to practice with him. And
no, I haven't seen it, but thanks for the heads up. I'll look at it. When you send me something to look at, if you would, I mean, my email box runs about 80 to 90,000 emails in it, and I sometimes miss things. But if there's something specifically for me to catch, if you just drop me a quick text, hey, I just sent you an email to look at, then I'll make sure to catch it.
Okay, sure. All right. Yeah. I'll do that.
Sweet.
Yeah.
All right, young lady, we appreciate you. Look forward to seeing what unfolds.
Thanks a lot, Michael. Yeah,
okay, lots of love.
Very
blessings.
So. Okay, thanks.
Yeah, blessings on him on his journey too.
Thanks.
Okay, take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.
And Jeannie, I just sent you a copy of that poster too. If you want to put a link in the notes. Basically, this is a psychiatrist that does brain scans, and he shows what a healthy brain looks like. If you look at it from the top side, energetically what it looks like, and it's this nice symmetrical structure with different colors flowing through it, and then you look at there's a picture of a same brain scan for someone that's been on meth for 3 years, and there are holes and depressions in the structure of it. You look at 10 years on alcohol and it looks tragic. You look at 4 years on cocaine, and I mean the function is just obviously shattered. 6 years on opiates, 4 years on tobacco, and they're pointing to different ages. And then if anyone, whenever I've had it in a classroom, whenever I've gone into a treatment center or whatever, and I've shown this poster, and I don't explain anything, I just pick it up and say, which brain, if this is a healthy looking brain, which brain do you most not want to have? And everybody points to the same one, and that's to a young person of 17. Remember, I believe it's a young man, and after 4 years of marijuana use. And the brain destruction is so obvious that and the people say, well, it's no worse than alcohol. Well, actually, one of the other brains that's on the poster is one of someone, and this is after 10 years of alcohol, but it's about as tragic as the 4 years on marijuana. And so, the question I ask people who feel like they have to use to be happy is why do you need to do that in order to achieve what you call happiness? And what would it be like to have tools and work through whatever it is you're traumatized about, and then with a brain that functions in a healthy way, that functions normally? And it seems, I can think of one person in particular, and it was just like, I just can't face life without being doped up. Can't face it. I don't want to deal with it. It's like, well, okay, but sooner or later, the organic dysfunctions occur. It's the killing of the mind, the brain. And for those who say, oh, no, pot doesn't do any harm, well, best information I have is that the half-life of a THC molecule is somewhere between 8 days and 8 months. I'm not sure whose figures are correct. And that THC molecule just happens to be the right shaped molecule to block the opening in a brain cell into which nutrition enters and out of which wastes leave. And so when THC enters that space, now if the body metabolized it out in 24 hours like most things, wouldn't be a big deal. But when the half-life is somewhere between 8 days, and it may be as long as 8 months, again, I don't know if there's any definitive research, I haven't found it yet, that says what that half-life is. That means that as a result of one joint, half of the THC blocking up the nutritional input and the waste removal in that brain cell, half of it's still there, whatever that time period, at least 8 days later, and half of that 8 days later, and half of that 8 days later. So someone who's replenishing on a daily basis, it's going to take a long time for the brain to go through those half-lives to remove the impact of that drug. And so our invitation to people is take the tools and experience a normal brain, let go of those crutches, and experience a normal brain. What is it like for your brain to function as it's designed to? Remove the blocks, allow yourself to detox, and watch what happens. And that may be a challenging conversation for some. And if so, then talk to us. I hope you'll take up the challenge. I hope you'll open the conversation. And so what's on your mind? We've got about 10 minutes left. And so we've got time for another good question or two, conversation or two around these tools. How can we support you? What's on your mind? If you're on one of those stations where we can't see you in our control panel, our call-in number is 563-999-3581, 563-999-3581. Call that number. You'll be listening to the show. Push 1, we'll be having a conversation. How can we support you? Miss Jeannie, do we have anybody out there in the phone queue with a hand up? Anything happening in the chat room?
It's all quiet on this end. Don't know if you've seen it yet or not. I just saw a message from Michael J. We had asked the other day for everybody to hold Jamie, that's Michael J's new wife, in your thoughts and prayers, that she tested positive for COVID just right after the wedding, and just got a text from Michael J. that CJ's tested positive.
Oh, dear.
So we ask that you hold her in the space, too, because she is immunocompromised and on dialysis, and she sure didn't need this on top of it.
That's for sure. Well, fortunately, she is vaccinated, and hopefully that vaccination will assist her in being able to process through and let loose. I guess that leaves Michael J. right in the middle of COVID. He hasn't tested positive, or he hasn't said?
No. He said that so far his sinus stuff going on, but he's not tested positive. So.
Yeah.
And
he's
thankfully we've been okay.
I
mean, because we stayed at their house, but we have not had any symptoms or anything. So I just got a message in the chat room. Says a note to the previous caller, Susan. It says in 7 weeks to sobriety, Joan Matthews Larson details nutritional supports for recovery. It's an excellent book for understanding the biochemistry of addiction. And then there's a link, and I will put that in the notes for today, and I'll also send it to you, Susan.
What was the name of the book, Jean?
In 7 weeks to sobriety.
Uh-huh.
And it just, she says it details nutritional support for recovery, and an excellent book for understanding the biochemistry of addiction.
Awesome. Definitely, nutrition is a big part of the process. And sadly, we talk in this culture. It's been a conversation, in fact, it goes back to the 30s, and Congress was informed that the soils in America were minerally deficient back then. And what I'm realizing as we get more and more into growing our own food, which is what we're doing here now over the last 3 years, that you can't grow food in dirt. Can't be done. And most of what's called food in our culture is not food. It's grown in dirt, and dirt doesn't grow food. It requires soil to grow food. Soil is something that's alive. Soil is something that's vital. You can't spray a gallon per acre of poison on soil and still have soil at the other end of that insanity, and then plant seeds in it. And because you put chemicals in to force the seed to do something, truly the result of that process is not food. Yes, that tomato looks like a tomato, but it is not a tomato, I promise you. Unless there is the bioactivity in the soil that moves it out of the realm of dirt and puts it into the realm of soil, it takes soil to produce a tomato or an apple or an orange or anything else. Can produce things that look like, but they are not food. And I think that's a big part of why there's so much aberrant behavior and why there is so much addiction to, all of the drugs of this culture. And that includes, of course, alcohol, but it includes emotional addictors such as busyness and rage. Rage, I would offer, is not an emotion as our culture would teach us. Rage is a chemical addiction, an internally produced chemical that anesthetizes a person against pain. And so when you become nutritionally solvent, that is, you actually begin to eat food, which means it's grown in soil, there has to be proper bioactivity. There has to be proper life in the soil to put life into the food. Life does not come from death. There's a certain chemical which has been found, and there's been huge awards for cancer resulting from the use of this chemical. And it amazes me that in America, we all live in towns and cities that sell this product still, even though it has been proven to cause cancer, and millions of dollars in awards have been paid, and it's still for sale in your local hardware store, in your local big box store. It's still being sold. And there are farmers who, pardon me, I shouldn't call them farmers. That's a misnomer. Farmers grow food. There are still people called agribusiness who pour a gallon of this stuff on every acre to make sure everything in the soil is completely dead. And then they put seeds in the ground. Seeds have been altered so that they'll grow with certain chemicals and withstand certain poisons. And it produces something that looks like food. It's sophistry. It's not food. There's an interesting video you can watch on YouTube. It's free, called We Must Grow. Give it a look. Heal from the ground up. And we need to start our healing process from the ground up. So, delighted to share with you the best year yet of your eternal life. Thanks for joining us. Blessings. Bye-bye.